Welcome to Motivation AI Matters, the podcast where we talk about personalized communication, marketing disruption, and why motivation AI matters for your business. I'm Alex Olesen, here to help you channel the power of language to motivate your customers to engage and act. Welcome back to the Motivation AI Matters podcast. I'm really excited to be joined by this episode's guest, Paul Roetzer. Paul is the founder and CEO of the Marketing AI Institute. Paul, great to have you.
It's great to be here. Looking forward to the conversation. We've had plenty of offline conversations over the years, but first chance I think we get to do it for a podcast, so it should be fun.
I know I've been looking forward to this one for a while. We've been talking about appearing on a podcast together for a couple of months. We've had a lot of really interesting conversations about generative AI. You've been a longtime friend of Persado's, and I figured we'd make it official and bring you on the podcast and talk about your point of view on the industry and your background. And I think that's a great place to get started. So could you share with us a little bit about your background, how you arrived at where you are today?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's always helpful to start from the college days, I guess, because I came out of journalism school. So I think the first thing people need to know about me is I'm actually a liberal arts major. I'm a writer by trade. My wife is a painting major and an art history major. So I come at this from an angle of I have a deep respect for the arts and the human ability to create. So I am not a machine learning engineer or data scientist or an AI researcher in a traditional sense. I started working in a marketing agency and eventually founded my own in 2005. And that we became HubSpot's first partner in 2007, which really threw me into the marketing technology space and the emergence of mobile, iPhone, social media, everything was sort of bubbling up at that time. And then in 2011, I just developed a curiosity about artificial intelligence and started trying to understand what IBM Watson was and how it worked and how it won on Jeopardy. And so I spent a couple of years just researching AI and wrote about it a little bit in my second book in 2014, just some theories about how it could be applied to marketing. And then I started just doing a lot of public speaking about it. People started asking me to come and give talks on that topic. And then in 2016, we turned that sort of interest and curiosity into the Marketing AI Institute and just started publishing a couple times a week what we were learning and interviews we were doing and companies we were following like Persado, the companies that in the early days of AI in the mid-teens were actually doing some interesting things with machine learning and natural language processing. And so then I sold my agency in 2021 to focus on Marketing AI Institute. And that's what I do today. We're a media event and education company, run conferences, online courses, publish a bunch of content and have a podcast. So yeah, just I wouldn't say I fell into it. It's been like a 12-year run to end up where we are today, but ChatGPT certainly accelerated the interest in what we're doing. And I think just overall awareness about artificial intelligence.
Absolutely. We at Persado also have a lot of people who say they fell into artificial intelligence. In fact, our prior guest, Lisa Spira, who oversees our content intelligence team, she's a linguistics expert by trade and did not have formal education in machine learning. And I think that affords her a very unique perspective, being able to work with our technology. And I would say the same thing about you. So taking your background in writing and even your wife's passion for art, this must be a very interesting time for you to observe this wave of generative AI technology being able to author its own content using a series of prompts. In your own words, what is generative AI and what are some of the most useful applications that you've seen of generative AI so far?
Yeah, we think of generative AI as the ability for the machine to create something from a prompt. So language is an obvious one, the ability for it to write things, but you also have image generation, video generation, audio generation, music, or the AI Drake thing, a few weeks back or a month or two ago. It's able to generate audio, and then code is the other one. But those are kind of the five major things. Now that it's going to keep expanding, and there's other things like synthetic data but in terms of most business and marketing people, those are the categories that you're going to really be thinking about. And so the use cases are basically anywhere where those things exist, anywhere where you're creating content. So if you're in sales, sales emails and proposals, if you're in marketing, marketing emails, landing pages, website copy, ads, social copy, these are all things that AI can assist. And again, like Persado's been doing stuff like this for years, where you're custom training these capabilities based on brands and data. So it's not new, but ChatGPT, sort of the generative AI term for it, emerged in 2022, and then ChatGPT just brought it to everyone. Like, I think, what was there, 100 million users in January or something. So that was really what changed, is there were some breakthroughs in the capabilities, but it was really just the mass access and adoption to the technology that brought us to where we are.
Yeah, I agree. There have been some precursor technologies to what we now commonly refer to as generative AI. We'll get to Persado in a bit, but we do pride ourselves on having a decade-long track record of humans inserting a certain prompt about the audience they're trying to reach, the emotion that they're trying to convey, and then Persado using statistical analysis and machine learning, now what we refer to as motivation AI, in order to optimize language that an audience will see based on that audience's historical internet behavior, their interaction with the brand over time. What other, and this can be outside of marketing, but what other enterprise use cases and applications have you seen in the past few months that are really interesting or even slightly controversial?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that most organizations we're talking to are trying to solve for the language model side, because it does touch every function of business. So anywhere where words are created, marketing, sales, service ops, HR, finance, legal, it's going to affect all of it, all knowledge work, basically. So I would say a lot of organizations are just trying to get a grasp of what exactly is this technology and what are they going to do. Now, we've seen really interesting examples. Like, actually, I just saw one yesterday. What Wendy's is putting like a chat interface basically at the drive-through that's powered by a language model, where you're able to, like, it's trained on like the acronyms people use for the food. And so I think you're going to start seeing a lot of these higher profile examples where people are going to start interacting with these AI agents, and it's going to become second nature, and you're not even going to think about it. But for right now, I think a lot of corporations are really racing to figure out what to do on the language side. And do they need to train their own models, and where's the data come from? And so that's what a lot of our conversations are centering around right now.
I agree. It's a very interesting time to be working in the enterprise space. We are having conversations daily with our clients around how to integrate Persado with other generative AI capabilities, even more long-term conversations around job displacement, new career creation, and outside the scope of the work that we do at Persado. But a really interesting observation that I'm seeing in the news and in market is, what are the implications for education and job readiness in the next decade? So I really do believe, and it sounds like in your experience, you're seeing something very similar, that this wave of generative AI technology has very disruptive capabilities to accelerate time to market, amortize R&D expenses, but also produce very fresh, new content for marketers and for other lines of business.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing it at the university level. I've had quite a number of conversations with different universities, and everyone is screaming, not even just higher ed. Like, I've talked with high schools. I've even talked with primary school, like principals and heads of districts that just don't know what to do. Like, they don't understand the tech, and they have teachers they may know are using it, or maybe they don't. They have students that They're not sure if they're using it or if they should encourage them to use it. So it is very disruptive. And it is, the challenge is we still have to teach critical thinking. Like we can't have students coming through any level of school. My kids are in 5th and 4th grade, and I'm very cautious in how to show them how to use the technology. And I'm very much teaching it more like a calculator at this point, that they're exposed to the technology and they know it exists. I'm sure their friends, are aware of it, but we're using it as a tool to like check our work and try creative alternatives to what they're doing. And then I'll actually want them to analyze what the machine outputs. And then in a perfect world, you're actually having them critically analyze how that output maybe is different and what did it do maybe better than we did and what can we learn from it. So I do think there is a very important conversation to be had about education. It's moving slowly. I'm guessing a lot of leaders of schools are going to spend the summer trying to figure this out. It kind of got thrown at them like in December, and in the middle of the school year, you got all of a sudden trying to figure out how to transform education. That's a big ask for these people. So I think you're going to have a summer where there's going to be a lot of work probably done around this space going into next school year.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the implications for how students interact with AI has a lot of crossover with how employees and workers will interact with AI. So I want to pivot back to the work that you're doing. I know that you recently launched a series titled Piloting AI for Marketers.
Yeah.
Now, without giving away the series in its entirety, what would you say are 3 key points or takeaways that professional marketers should know to understand and optimize how they're using artificial intelligence?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with a base level understanding of what it is and how it works. So to me, all of this is anything you do has to be premised on that you have an understanding of what it is and you can explain it at a, confidently explain it to your peers or to your leaders in the organization. So you have to invest what's needed to do it. Now you can get that pretty quickly. Like we do an Intro to AI for Marketers class. The last one we just did had over 1,300 people registered for it. And that is like 30 minutes of me explaining the fundamentals and then doing Q&A for 30 minutes. That could be enough. Like that can give you enough of what you need. Then from there, you can start getting into, okay, how do I actually identify a use case and prioritize those use cases to pick them? And then once I have my use cases, so maybe it's an AI writing tool or a social media tool or an analytics tool or an advertising tool, then how do I actually go find the right vendors to do this? How do I assess those vendors? So understanding of the technology, identification and prioritization of use cases, and then knowing how to like really evaluate these vendors is critical.
That makes sense and really resonates with me in a lot of conversations that I have with our clients on a pretty regular basis. One of the most common topics that we've come across in the last decade, and certainly more common now, is the idea of building technology versus buying it. And I think the recent surge of interest in generative AI, specifically ChatGPT, has put some wind in the sails of the build versus buy argument. And the accessibility to creating code, pseudocode, functionality a lot more quickly than has been available to R&D teams and marketers, I think has really placed a lot more emphasis on homegrown technology versus, to your point, selecting the right vendor.
Yeah.
Taking a step back from that, just in general, how do you think generative AI is going to disrupt business models within the enterprise?
So I think what's going to happen is we're seeing in the past, you had to go seek these tools out. You had to go find third-party applications that were smarter versions of what you were using or new kinds of technologies that enabled you to do new things. What's about to happen in 2023 is it's just going to be infused into all your core tech platforms. So if you use Box for knowledge management and storage, they have Box AI now where you can just have a conversation with your knowledge base, like whatever you're looking for and, query it. You have Slack is going to have Einstein GPT baked into it. HubSpot has ChatSpot. Salesforce has Einstein. Google Workspace is going to have language models baked in. Microsoft 365 Copilot, all this year. So if you think about any industry and the fact that all of your workers, including administrative staff, like everyone is going to have access to generative tools baked right into the platforms they're already using. And they have no idea what those technologies are, nor how to use them, or how to change their processes based on them. And it's just going to be like flipping a switch, and all of a sudden, everybody's got these capabilities. That on its own is insanely disruptive. Then you take it and say, okay, well, smart entrepreneurs could look at this technology and say, this whole industry is backwards and slow and inefficient. What if I just go find a couple people and we just build a smarter version of this company? I think you're going to see a lot of that in different industries too. Like there are some industries who are just ripe for disruption. They are slow and inefficient by design because that's how they make money. And not to get like too specific, but law firms, like they profit from inefficiency. Like, and that is just not going to cut it in the age of AI. So I just feel like there are some industries that it's very obvious what's about to happen. They don't want it to happen, and they're going to resist it and pretend like it's not going to happen, but it's coming. And it's because it's just going to be infused into everything we do, whether we seek it out or not. I think that's the major change here.
I agree. And the two axes that we talk about when we're discussing the economics of generative AI with executives at our clients are efficiency and efficacy. Mm-hmm. So efficacy, how do you improve the performance of an existing process or system? And then efficiency, how do you produce something more quickly?
Yeah.
With less of an impact on your bottom line. And I think specific to service industries, law firms are a great example where the unit of measure is the billable hour. The more they work, the more they get paid. A solution like ChatGPT or something to be released can really threaten a business model like that, where not only are the documents being prepared sharper than what may exist today, but they're being produced in fewer billable hours. Yeah. Just one example, I am sure in the coming years, you'll see this type of technology proliferate into even very advanced use cases like a pharmaceutical laboratory to be able to run synthetic experiments, accelerate R&D cycles for medication, which on one hand can replace the humans who are working in those labs. On the other hand, has tremendous upside to be able to deliver, very highly needed medicine out into the market.
There will be trade-offs, no doubt.
There definitely will be trade-offs. So let's talk about that a little bit. What do you believe the barriers to entry are for companies to invest in this type of technology? And then quick follow on after that, if companies don't invest in this technology, do they risk being left behind?
Yeah, I mean, to answer the second question first, my thesis is the future of all businesses, AI are obsolete. So you're either AI native, built smarter from the ground up, AI emergent, you evolve to infuse AI across the organization, or you just become irrelevant. And depending on the industry, that irrelevancy could take years. If you're a SaaS company, it could be months or days. Like how quickly it happens is going to be based on what kind of industry you're in and how quick adoption is happening. Now, the barriers, the first one that comes to mind to me is this is a complex buying environment. There's literally thousands of generative AI tools. If you just focus on language or image generation or vision, like it's really hard to know who the players are. And so you're now, especially in larger corporations, you're likely starting with the known trusted entities. You're going to go work with organizations who have a proven track record of working with larger enterprises. Because they understand the dynamics of a business well beyond just your need for smarter technology. So I think that for a lot of organizations, it can be very hard to figure this out because the tech is evolving so quickly. And the second piece that I think a lot about is the lack of talent that understands this stuff. So if you look around your peer group in your company, or even at higher level, go find somebody who can explain to you like what a language model is or how generative AI works. Like they don't exist. They're very hard to find. So you're talking about like upskilling a workforce, potentially hiring, but who do you hire? Like, I don't know. Like they're not coming out of universities trained on this stuff yet. So it's all new. And I think that's the talent gap is probably going to end up being the biggest barrier. The other one that comes to mind, I know you all work with highly regulated industries. There are some industries that just aren't going to be allowed to do this stuff, like in the near term. Like you're going to have governance or regulations or laws that prevent you from benefiting from all the things it's capable of for different reasons within your industry. And so that's a reality too.
I think this opens up a lot of philosophical questions around how humans and AI interact. One of the things we haven't touched on, which I think is fascinating, is who does the intellectual property belong to?
Yeah.
You brought up a great example about the Drake and the Weeknd song, which has been bouncing around Spotify and SoundCloud, a couple other streaming platforms. Just using that as a hypothetical, who owns that IP? If someone generated that using one of these, thousands of AI softwares, I think the questions that are going to be asked in industry around regulation and copyright and intellectual property ownership are going to be new.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a totally greenfield opportunity. And I agree with you. I think it's AI or obsolescence.
Yep.
So
on the ownership front, the latest guidance from the Copyright Office is, in the case of Drake, no one owns it. So the Copyright Office on March 16th, 2023 issued updated guidance that said a prompt is not considered human authorship and only a human can own a copyright. So if it's images, videos, text, logos, anything you create, if AI created it, you cannot copyright it, and I can steal it and put it on hats and sell it. And like there is no protection, basically. I always at this moment say, talk to your IP attorney. Like, I am not an IP attorney. I've spent lots of money with IP attorneys and learned a few things along the way. But this is not my domain of expertise. But that is the guidance I'm passing along, I would say, from the Copyright Office, is do not assume you own it. And if you hire agencies to do work for you, this is a really important one, and you have a work for hire agreement where the copyright passes to you, if that agency, unbeknownst to you, is using AI to generate these things, then you technically don't actually own the copyright that you think you own. So it's an important issue for people to wrap their heads around. And I say, just talk to IP attorneys. Like, none of us really like to have to go talk to attorneys, but you need to on this one.
It's good advice, especially because this technology is being used sometimes without the, for lack of a better term, corporate chain of command being aware. And we have seen in especially highly regulated industries that we work with bans on ChatGPT for exactly the reason that you're bringing up, because the understanding of intellectual property and regulations is so new and so opaque that executives are putting a full stop to using this type of technology for fear of falling into one of these traps.
Yep.
So pivoting more to a topic closer to home for myself. I know that you've worked with Persado for a variety of years. You've been a great partner of ours. We, as I mentioned earlier, pride ourselves on having a decade of experience in what is now referred to as the generative AI industry. We've been taking human prompts, personalizing emotions and text based on the intended recipient in a subsector of generative AI that we refer to now as motivation AI. So that's how we position ourselves differently.
Yeah.
In your experience working with Persado over the past couple of years, what do you perceive to be our unique differentiator in the marketplace?
Yeah. So there's two things that seem to differentiate companies right now and be defensible in the software world. And those are data and distribution, meaning, let's say, an AI writing tool, like I want to use it to write blog posts, whatever. I could use ChatGPT as of November of 2022. I could use, any number of other players, but then Grammarly showed up, and Grammarly has 30 million customers. That's distribution. Like, you can show up late to the party and you got massive audience and you can introduce a tool and you can be a winner. What Persado has always had is the data. I mean, distribution as well, like a proven customer base. But the way these tools work is they make predictions about words based on general knowledge. They go learn the internet. What they don't have is performance data. So when it's generating things for you, it doesn't know if what it's writing actually will work. It just knows that it looks like what it learned from. And those can sound like really good emails. They can look like really big landing pages or blog posts or social shares or ads or like whatever you're creating. The language models and these like app companies that are building interfaces on top of them can look really good and sound really good. Are they actually going to perform? They have no idea. They have no performance data to tell them it's going to perform. And that's where Persado shines, is that's what it was built on, was performance data, like learned performance data and what words work and what words motivate action. And that is probably like the most valuable asset for Persado, is that's what you have, is data that these other models just don't have. That's how I would see it, at least from like an outsider objective perspective.
So Paul, I think that's great competitive positioning for Persado. To build on your answer, distribution, I think, has been one of the strengths that we've focused on building in the last couple of years. If you were to look at Persado 5 years ago, our primary use case was an email. We've since expanded to social, to web, and then we've moved even further down funnel to focus on the shopping cart page in specific, addressing past abandonment behavior based on demographics, based on shopping trends. And we're, not to give anything away, but really focused on how do you abstract the idea of an input and an output so creative teams can effectively brainstorm the types of campaigns and emotions that they want to use when interacting with their audience. So more to come for sure, but I think leading the charge and adopting similar trends to the rest of the industry, understanding how marketing and data teams can work well together and human and machine can work alongside each other effectively as well.
Yeah, I would think the data alone is grounds for excitement. I mean, I do think you have what a lot of these companies are going to be looking for.
Absolutely. So speaking of excitement, Paul, and thank you again for coming on the podcast. This has been a great conversation. What does the future of the Marketing AI Institute have in store? And is there anything else that you're working on that you want to talk about with the audience?
Yeah, I mean, our big event is the Marketing AI Conference every year. So it's July in Cleveland. And this one's shaping up to be certainly the biggest one yet. It's already the biggest one yet, I think, in terms of its sales. So we're seeing a whole new level of interest around that. So we're really excited about that. And then I think just events overall, we did an AI for Writers Summit in March. We thought we'd get 1,000 people. We got 4,200. So so much like of a groundswell of interest. And so we have that. We have the AI for Agencies Summit in the fall, and we're looking at some other like kind of expanding that strategy, because it's just a quick way to get this information to people and help them. And then online education, our Piloting AI for Marketers series you mentioned is sort of the core offering at the moment, but we have some pretty cool ideas around some other original series that we're working on. So I think there's just going to be a lot of a focus on creating as much value as possible through the events and online education and continuing to expand those areas.
Fantastic. And for those in the audience, I'm sure there will be many who would benefit from working with MAII. What's the best way to engage you? What's the best way they should reach out?
Yeah, marketingaiinstitute.com is where everything's housed: the book, the courses, the newsletter, the podcast, the blueprints about different industries. You can find it all there. And then personally, I'm very active on LinkedIn and Twitter. So either of those, LinkedIn's great though. And let me know you heard on the podcast, and definitely connect. So those are the two main areas where people can connect with me.
Fantastic. Well, Paul, really appreciate you coming on. Again, for the audience, this was Paul Roetzer, founder and CEO of the Marketing AI Institute and 3-time author.
No more author. I don't think we're gonna have more of those coming anytime soon.
I was gonna ask if there's a 4th book coming. Sounds like we can ask. We can check in later.
Maybe some digital books. I don't know about a print book anytime soon.
Maybe authored by ChatGPT. Who knows?
Yeah, here we go.
Awesome.
Right.
Thanks a lot, Paul. It's a pleasure. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you next time here on Motivation AI Matters. Until then, take a moment to make sure you're subscribed and get to know Motivation AI better by checking out the resource library at persado.com.